The human family is desperately sick. There are a few exceptions, of course, but almost without exception, the entire human species is afflicted with what we have come to see as a kind of psychological autoimmune disease. I call it an autoimmune disease because it's psychological in nature, and it's a disease that occurs as a result of trying to protect the mind from life itself, immunize us to the deep danger of being alive as a human being. That disease is what we call the fear of life. The fear of life, when it strikes, which is very early in life, produces a context in which the mind takes form. The context that determines the character and the structure and the purpose and activities of all of the psychological mechanisms that come into being over time and that constitute our personality, our mind. The mind is a conglomeration of psychological structures, and all of those psychological structures have appeared within a context that assumes there's something wrong with life itself. And it's this context that has warped and contaminated the entire psychological structure that makes up the mind. The context is unseen, it's just there. It is the existence of those contaminated psychological structures that constitute the misery that we feel, the feeling of lack and worthlessness or anger, aggression. And what we've discovered is that there is an extremely simple and extremely radical movement of attention that actually destroys that underlying context that sees life to be something that needs to be guarded against. And it seems to destroy the context pretty much immediately with one dose. And in the period immediately following it, it often is the case that that act repeats itself, whether we try to do it deliberately or whether it just happens on its own. The destruction of that context that holds life to be a problem is immediate. But the sickened psychological structures that have come into being influenced by that context, they don't just disappear immediately. They have some persistence to them. Some of them fall away very quickly, and some of them have longer legs than others. They all fall away in the end, but the period of their falling away turns out to be, not for everyone, but for most, quite dramatic and quite troubling and quite confusing and painful, really. It's not so surprising that that would be so. The mind is regenerating itself. So there is a period of recovery, and after a time, which varies with the individual, they are mostly gone. And it turns out that life as a human being, free of the fear, free of the effects of the fear, is actually what we have always wanted, just as it is, with its difficulties, with its confusion, with its danger, with its sweetness. And as time goes on and the mind is healing, and the healing of the mind involves the arising of new psychological mechanisms that are not contaminated with that kind of existential fearfulness, we find that the relationship with life and the endless opportunity to learn is the greatest gift that possibly could come our way. We become human, free of the fear. And the thing about this that makes it so fantastic is that it takes so little. It takes only that one look, that one attempt to get the experience of what it feels like to be me, what me feels like. That's all it takes. It doesn't even require that we actually know that we have succeeded. Turns out that when we actually embark upon that effort, we really can't fail. If we form the strong intent to get the taste of me here, the disease is cured. The context of fearfulness and anxiety is destroyed. So the magnificent thing about this is its simplicity. It doesn't take constant maintenance. It doesn't take a deep understanding of anything. It just takes the willingness to try one time with one breath to get a taste of what it feels like to be me. And then, as the symptoms of the disease begin to fall away, the opportunity opens up to actually begin to work with the only thing we can do, the only thing we have any control over, which is where we put our attention. And as we learn and we become more skillful, we learn that the ability to have control over what I attend to has a far-reaching and endless effect on our ability to live our lives effectively, usefully, as intelligently as possible. So that's what we're about here. And everything we do is in service to that one look, and the effective transition to sanity and self-reliance.